The golden ship descended through the red sky of planet Kepler 442b like a falling star. Inside the human research station, 16-year-old Jake Harrison pressed his face against the observation window, watching the massive vessel land with perfect precision on the rocky plateau below. "Stay close and keep quiet," his mother Dr. Emma Harrison whispered, adjusting her formal uniform one last time. Prince Valdris is not known for his patience with humans, especially young ones. Jake nodded but couldn't hide his excitement. He had lived on this remote planet his entire life, surrounded by nothing but scientists, research equipment, and the mysterious creatures his mother studied. Today was the first time he would meet someone from the great Zorathian Empire that controlled half the galaxy. The main dome filled with nervous energy as the research staff gathered for the ceremony. Jake counted 23 humans total, a tiny population compared to the billions who lived on the Empire's core worlds. They were here to study the planet's unique ecosystem, particularly the massive predators known as void stalkers that roamed the canyon systems below. Heavy footsteps echoed through the airlock as Prince Valdris entered, flanked by 4 armored guards. The alien prince stood nearly 8 feet tall, his reptilian features sharp and aristocratic. Golden scales covered his neck and arms, while his eyes gleamed with the cold intelligence of a born predator. His ceremonial armor was worth more than the entire research station. "Humans of Kepler 442b, Prince Valdris began, his voice carrying easily through the dome's speakers. The translation system made his words sound almost musical, though his tone suggested anything but kindness. "I come bearing the seal of Emperor Zorvok to formalize your research permits for another standard year." Dr. Harrison stepped forward and bowed formally. "Your Highness honors us with his presence. Our work here continues to provide valuable data about frontier world ecosystems." The prince's laugh was like metal scraping stone. "Valuable? You have been here for 3 years and accomplished what, exactly? You hide behind your walls while the local wildlife terrorizes your expeditions. How many researchers have died to these void stalkers now?" Jake felt his mother tense beside him. The deaths were a painful subject for everyone on the station. 17 good people had died trying to study the massive creatures that seemed to appear from nowhere, strike without warning, and vanish back into the maze of canyons that covered most of the planet's surface. 17, Your Highness," Dr. Harrison replied carefully. "But we have made significant progress in understanding their behavioral patterns. Given time, we believe we can establish safe observation protocols." "Time?" Prince Valdris circled the assembled humans like a predator sizing up prey. "My warriors would have eliminated such pests within days of landing. But then we Zorathians understand strength. We do not cower from inferior species." Jake's best friend Tom whispered, "What an arrogant jerk." Several other teenagers nodded in agreement, but Jake found himself studying the prince more carefully. There was something in the alien's manner that seemed almost theatrical, like he was performing rather than simply being rude. "The void stalkers are not ordinary predators, Your Highness," Dr. Mike Turner spoke up. The security chief was one of the few humans who had actually survived a close encounter with the creatures. "They show intelligence, coordination, and tactical awareness that suggests you humans are too weak to handle them properly," Prince Valdris interrupted. "These void stalkers have terrorized your pathetic settlement for years. You study them like they are some great mystery, when any competent warrior would simply hunt them down and be done with it." The prince paused in front of Jake, his golden eyes fixing on the boy with sudden interest. "Though I suppose I should not expect courage from a species that sends children to the frontier. Tell me, young human, do you also fear these mighty predators that your elders cannot defeat?" Jake felt every eye in the dome turn toward him. His mother's hand tightened on his shoulder in warning, but something about the prince's mocking tone made his blood boil. The man was treating them all like cowards and fools, dismissing years of careful research and the deaths of good people. "Maybe the problem isn't that we're too weak," Jake said quietly. "Maybe the problem is that everyone assumes the only solution is violence." The dome fell completely silent. Prince Valdris raised one scaled eyebrow, his expression shifting from boredom to genuine surprise. "Excuse me, child?" Jake's mother tried to pull him back, but he stepped forward instead. "I said maybe killing them isn't the answer. Maybe we need to understand them first." The prince stared at Jake for several long seconds, then threw back his head and laughed with genuine amusement. The sound echoed off the dome's walls like thunder. "Remarkable. A human whelp thinks he knows better than trained xenobiologists and imperial warriors." Prince Valdris gestured grandly to the assembled crowd. "This is too entertaining to ignore. Very well, young philosopher. Since you believe understanding is superior to strength, let me make you an offer. The prince's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the dome. If you, or any human on this worthless rock, can tame one of your precious void stalkers, I will grant you ownership of this entire planet. Everything on it, everything under it, everything in its orbital space. All of it. Jake felt his heart hammering as gasps echoed around the dome. Entire planets were worth trillions of imperial credits. No human had ever owned even a single world. But when you fail, the prince continued with a predatory smile, your research permits are revoked and you have 1 month to evacuate. All of you. Jake looked around at the faces of everyone he had ever known. Scientists, technicians, teachers, friends. This was their home, their life's work, their future. The prince was gambling with everything they had built. Deal? Jake said. The word hung in the recycled air like a challenge thrown down between species. Jake spent the next morning in the station's data center, surrounded by screens displaying 3 years of research on the void stalkers. His mother sat beside him, her face pale with worry. Jake, what were you thinking? Emma whispered, glancing around to make sure they were alone. Prince Valdris isn't some school bully. He has the power to destroy everything we've built here. I know, Mom. Jake pulled up a video file showing a pack of void stalkers moving through Red Canyon. But look at this. Really look. The creatures on screen were magnificent and terrifying. Each one stood 12 feet tall, their black shell-like skin seeming to absorb the sunlight. 6 powerful legs ended in claws that could cut through steel, while their elongated heads held eyes that glowed with an unsettling intelligence. I've looked at this footage 1,000 times, Emma said tiredly. They're apex predators. Fast, smart, and deadly. But watch how they move. Jake slowed the video down frame by frame. See how the lead stalker pauses here? And here? It's not hunting. It's checking on the others, making sure they're following safely. Emma frowned at the screen. That's just pack behavior. Wolves do the same thing. Do wolves do this? Jake switched to another file showing a stalker encounter from 6 months ago. Dr. Peterson's team had been collecting mineral samples near the thermal vents when 3 stalkers appeared on the canyon rim above them. In the video, the creatures could have easily jumped down and attacked the exposed humans. Instead, they paced back and forth, making loud clicking sounds until the research team retreated. Only when the humans were safely away did the stalkers descend to investigate the disturbed area. They drove the team away from the thermal vents, Jake said. But they didn't hurt anyone. Mom, what if they weren't trying to kill Dr. Peterson's team? What if they were trying to protect something? Emma studied her son's face. Protect what? There's nothing down there but hot springs and mineral deposits. Maybe there's something we can't see. Jake opened a map of all stalker encounters over the past 3 years. Look at this pattern. Every single sighting happens in the same general area. The deep canyons, the thermal regions, anywhere there are underground cave systems. The map showed dozens of red dots marking stalker appearances, all clustered around the planet's most geologically active regions. Emma had seen this data before, but she had always assumed it simply showed the creature's preferred hunting grounds. They're not territorial predators, Jake continued. They're guards. Every time we get close to certain areas they show up and drive us away. But they never chase us very far. It's like they just want us to leave specific places alone. Dr. Mike Turner entered the data center, his security uniform rumpled from a sleepless night. Jake, your mother told me about your theory. You think the stalkers are protecting something underground? It's the only explanation that fits, Jake said. Think about it, Mike. You've faced them in combat. How many times could they have killed you? Mike considered the question seriously. Every time, he admitted. They're faster and stronger than anything I've ever seen. But they always gave me a chance to retreat. Because they don't want to kill us. They want us to stay away from whatever they're guarding. Emma pulled up geological surveys of the canyon systems. The cave networks down there are extensive. Some of them go down for miles. We've never fully explored them because the stalkers always attack our survey teams. Not attack, Jake corrected. Intercept. There's a difference. Prince Valdris appeared in the doorway, his golden armor gleaming under the artificial lights. Still playing with your data, boy? Perhaps you would prefer to surrender now and spare everyone the inevitable humiliation. Jake turned to face the alien prince. I need 2 weeks. You have 3 days. The original deal didn't include a time limit, Jake said calmly. But if you're in a hurry to leave, I understand. Running an empire must keep you busy. The prince's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you suggesting I lack patience, human child? I'm suggesting that if you want to see something that's never been done before, you need to give me time to do it properly. 2 weeks or the deal is off. For a moment, Jake thought Prince Valdris might strike him down where he stood. The alien's clawed hands flexed, and his guards shifted nervously. Then the prince smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Very well. 2 weeks. But when you fail, I want the entire galaxy to witness it. I am calling in news crews from the core worlds. Your defeat will be broadcast across the Empire as an example of human weakness. After the prince left, Emma grabbed her son's arm. Jake, what's your plan? You can't just walk into their territory and hope for the best. Actually, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Jake pulled up detailed scans of the canyon where the largest stalker pack had been spotted. Every approach so far has involved teams, weapons, vehicles, and equipment. We've been treating them like a problem to be solved with technology. Because they're dangerous. No, because we're scared. But what if one person went alone? No weapons, no equipment, no threat. Mike shook his head. That's suicide, kid. Those things are killing machines. Are they? Jake switched to video of the most recent encounter. Look at this footage again. Dr. Williams's team was cornered in a dead-end canyon. 3 stalkers had them completely trapped. But instead of attacking, what did they do? Emma watched as the stalkers on screen made their clicking sounds and paced restlessly, but never moved closer to the terrified humans. They waited, she said quietly, for 6 hours. Until our rescue team arrived with loud vehicles and bright lights. Only then did they retreat. They were giving Dr. Williams a chance to leave safely. Jake stood up and looked out the window toward the distant canyons where the stalkers lived. They're not monsters. They're guardians. And if I'm right about what they're guarding, this could change everything we know about this planet. His mother followed his gaze toward the red stone maze that had claimed so many lives. And if you're wrong? Jake smiled grimly. Then Prince Valdris gets to watch a human boy become stalker food on live television. Jake left the research station before dawn on the 7th day, carrying only a small backpack with water bottles, protein bars, basic tools, and his grandmother's music box. The ancient device was made of polished wood and brass, a relic from Earth that had somehow survived the journey across the galaxy. His mother watched from the observation deck as he walked toward Red Canyon alone. She had tried one last time to stop him, but Jake's mind was made up. 3 days of studying stalker behavior patterns had convinced him that approaching them in large groups only made them defensive. The canyon entrance loomed before him like the mouth of some sleeping giant. Red stone walls rose hundreds of feet on either side, carved smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Jake had never been this far from the station without a security escort, and the silence felt overwhelming. He found a flat boulder about 50 yards into the canyon and sat down to wait. According to the tracking data, this was where stalkers had been spotted most frequently. If his theory was correct, they were already watching him. Hours passed. The twin suns climbed higher, turning the canyon into an oven of reflected heat. Jake sipped his water carefully and tried to stay calm. Every shadow could hide a 12-foot predator. Every sound might be claws scraping on stone. On the 2nd day he saw the first one. A massive shape moved along the canyon rim, visible only as a brief silhouette against the sky. Jake forced himself to remain still as the creature studied him from above. After several minutes, it vanished without making a sound. By the 3rd day, Jake had established a routine. He would sit on his boulder during the daylight hours, occasionally eating or drinking, but making no sudden movements. At night, he slept in a small cave he had found, always leaving his pack outside as a sign that he meant no harm. The stalkers grew bolder. On the 4th morning, Jake woke to find massive claw marks in the sand around his cave. They had been investigating him while he slept, but had left him untouched. That afternoon, one finally approached. Jake heard it before he saw it, a soft clicking sound like fingernails tapping on glass. He looked up to see a void stalker standing at the far end of the canyon, its obsidian shell gleaming in the sunlight. The creature was even larger than he had imagined. Its 6 legs moved with fluid grace as it slowly approached, each step deliberate and careful. Its head was elongated like a horse's, but the intelligence in its glowing eyes was unmistakably alien. Jake remained perfectly still as the stalker circled his boulder. He could smell it now, a strange mixture of ozone and heated metal. Its breathing created small dust devils in the canyon floor. When the creature extended its head toward him, Jake slowly reached for his water bottle. The stalker tensed, ready to flee or attack, but Jake moved with deliberate slowness. He opened the bottle and poured half of his precious water onto the ground between them. The stalker studied the puddle for a long moment, then made a sound Jake had never heard before. It was low and rumbling like distant thunder, but somehow musical. Not threatening, curious. Jake reached into his pack and pulled out his grandmother's music box. The stalker's massive head tilted as he wound the small key. When the delicate melody of an old Earth song began to play, the creature's entire posture changed. More stalkers appeared on the canyon walls, drawn by the sound. Jake continued playing the simple tune as a pack of 12 descended into the canyon, surrounding him in a circle of living shadow. Their eyes, dozens of them, watched him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. The largest stalker, clearly the pack leader, approached the music box. When the melody ended, it made another sound, this one unmistakably sad, like a mournful song sung in a language Jake didn't understand. "You remember music, don't you?" Jake whispered. The alpha stalker's response was to turn and walk deeper into the canyon. Jake understood the invitation and followed. The cave system beneath the canyon was vast and beautiful. Glowing crystals lined the walls, providing soft blue light that revealed passages carved from solid rock. The air grew warmer as they descended, and Jake realized they were approaching the planet's geothermal core. After what felt like hours of walking through twisting tunnels, they emerged into a cavern that took Jake's breath away. The space was enormous, larger than the research station's main dome. Crystalline formations hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, and the walls pulsed with veins of luminescent minerals. But it was the center of the cavern that made Jake gasp in wonder. Dozens of egg-shaped structures, each the size of a person, lay in carefully arranged nests of soft crystal formations. They pulsed with internal light, and as Jake watched, he realized they were alive. The alpha stalker moved to the nearest nest and gently touched one of the eggs with its clawed hand. The egg responded with a brighter pulse, and Jake heard something impossible, a faint musical tone that echoed his grandmother's music box. "You're not guardians of the planet," Jake said in amazement. "You're guardians of them." The alpha looked at Jake with its glowing eyes and made another rumbling sound. This time Jake understood. It was a question. Jake approached the nest carefully and knelt beside the alpha. Up close he could see that the eggs were not just alive, they were trying to hatch. Hairline cracks covered their surfaces, but something was preventing them from breaking free. He wound his music box again and held it near the closest egg. As the melody played, the cracks spread wider, and the musical tone from within grew stronger. The egg was responding to the music, using it to synchronize its hatching process. "They need music to be born," Jake breathed. "That's why you've been protecting this place. You've been waiting for someone who could help them." The alpha stalker pressed its massive head against Jake's shoulder. Not threatening but grateful. Around them, more eggs began to glow brighter as the ancient melody filled the cavern. Jake realized he was witnessing something that had been waiting to happen for thousands of years. Retriage. Jake emerged from the canyon system after 8 days underground, fundamentally changed by what he had experienced. The alpha stalker walked beside him, no longer the terrifying predator of nightmares but a guardian with ancient wisdom in its glowing eyes. Jake had named him Shadow during their time in the deep caverns, and the massive creature seemed to approve of the name. Behind them came the rest of the pack, 12 void stalkers moving in perfect formation across the rocky landscape. Their obsidian shells caught the morning sunlight as they approached the research station, creating an intimidating display that sent every alarm in the facility screaming. Dr. Harrison watched from the observation deck, her heart torn between overwhelming relief and absolute terror. Her son was alive and walking freely among the planet's most dangerous predators. Security teams scrambled to defensive positions while Prince Valdris and his guards rushed to the main courtyard. "Impossible," the prince hissed as he saw Jake approaching with his escort of massive creatures. "What sorcery is this?" Jake walked calmly through the station's outer perimeter, Shadow's bulk providing a comforting presence at his side. The other stalkers formed a protective circle that included both the human structures and the Zorathian delegation. There was no aggression in their posture. They were simply making it clear that Jake was under their protection. "No sorcery, Your Highness," Jake said as he reached the center of the courtyard. "Just understanding." Prince Valdris drew his energy sword, its glowing blade humming with deadly power. "You dare bring these monsters into our presence? This is some form of mind control or technological manipulation. Guards, destroy them immediately." The Zorathian warriors raised their plasma weapons, but before they could fire, Shadow let out a sound that Jake had never heard before. It was deep and resonant, seeming to come from the very bones of the earth itself. The call echoed across the canyon systems and was answered immediately by similar voices from the distant stone formations. Within minutes, the rocky landscape around the research station came alive with movement. Stalkers emerged from hidden caves and crevices, their dark forms flowing across the red stone like living shadows. Soon, over 50 of the massive creatures surrounded the facility, creating an impenetrable wall of ancient guardians. But they made no aggressive moves. They simply waited. The deal was that I tame a stalker, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent courtyard. But I didn't tame Shadow. We chose to trust each other. Prince Valdris snarled, his reptilian features twisted with rage and humiliation. Semantics. You have not fulfilled the terms of our wager. These beasts follow you through some form of technological control or alien influence. Shadow's massive head turned toward the prince, and Jake felt the creature's emotions through their newly formed bond. There was ancient sadness there, protective anger, and underneath it all, a desperate hope that someone might finally understand. They're not beasts, Jake said firmly. They're the last guardians of a dying race. Jake reached into his pack and carefully withdrew one of the crystalline formations he had found in the deep caverns. As he held it up to the sunlight, it began to pulse with the same musical tones they had heard underground. Several of the stalkers joined in with their own harmonious calls, creating a symphony that seemed to resonate through everyone's bones. Dr. Harrison gasped from the observation deck. Jake, what is that? This planet isn't just a research station or a potential mining site, Jake explained, his confidence growing as he saw wonder replacing fear on the faces around him. It's a nursery. The stalkers have been protecting eggs in the deep caverns for thousands of years, waiting for someone who could help them hatch. Jake activated his grandmother's music box, and the delicate earth melody joined the alien harmonies. More crystal fragments throughout his pack began to glow and sing in response. The species that laid these eggs were musical beings, Jake continued. Their young need harmonic stimulation to complete their development. The stalkers have been trying to provide it for millennia, but they could never quite match the right frequencies. Prince Valdris lowered his weapon slightly, uncertainty flickering across his golden features. Even if this fantastic story were true, you still haven't tamed the creature. You've merely negotiated with it. Jake smiled and placed his hand on Shadow's massive flank. The stalker rumbled contentedly and leaned into the touch like an enormous cat. Then I guess the question is, what counts as taming? Making something obey you through force and fear? Or earning its trust and friendship? Shadow stepped forward and extended his elongated head toward Prince Valdris. The alien prince instinctively raised his sword, but Shadow made no threatening moves. Instead, he simply studied the Zorathian with those ancient, intelligent eyes. He's not my pet or my slave, Jake said. He's my partner. We made an agreement. I help his people complete their guardianship of the eggs, and they help humanity understand this planet's true secrets. Dr. Mike Turner emerged from the station with several other researchers, all staring in amazement at the peaceful assembly of humans, aliens, and stalkers. Jake. His mother called from the observation deck. How many eggs are there? Hundreds, Jake replied. Maybe thousands. All waiting to hatch. All needing music to wake up properly. Prince Valdris sheathed his sword but kept his hand on the weapon. This changes nothing. Even if your tale is true, partnership is not the same as taming. The wager was specific. Shadow made a soft clicking sound and turned to look at the prince. Then, to everyone's amazement, the massive stalker lowered his head in what was unmistakably a bow of respect. Shadow says you're right, Jake translated, somehow understanding the creature's meaning. Partnership isn't taming. It's something much better. The boy looked around at the assembled crowd, humans, Zorathians, and stalkers all sharing the same space without violence. But maybe it's time we started thinking bigger than just taming things. Emperor Zorvok arrived 3 days later in a ship so massive it blocked out the sun when it passed overhead. Jake watched from the research station's observation deck as the Imperial flagship settled onto the rocky plateau with mechanical precision. Shadow rested beside him, the Alpha Stalker's presence having become as natural as breathing. The Emperor was older than his son, his golden scales dulled with age but his eyes sharp with the cunning that had built a galactic empire. He moved with deliberate grace as he descended from his shuttle, flanked by an honor guard of elite warriors whose armor gleamed like liquid metal. Prince Valdris rushed to meet his father, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Father, this human child has made a mockery of our family honor. He consorts with dangerous beasts and claims it fulfills our sacred wager. Emperor Zorvok studied his son with calm yellow eyes. Show me, he said simply. Jake led the Imperial delegation toward the canyon entrance where Shadow waited with 5 other stalkers. The Emperor's guards tensed as they approached the massive creatures, hands moving instinctively toward their weapons. But Jake walked confidently into the midst of the stalkers, his small human form dwarfed by their obsidian bulk. "Your Majesty," Jake said with a formal bow, "may I present Shadow, Alpha of the Deep Canyon Pack, Guardian of the Ancient Nests, and my partner." Emperor Zorvok's expression remained neutral as he studied the scene. "Partner? The stalkers aren't monsters to be feared or enemies to be destroyed," Jake explained. "They are the last guardians of an extinct species called the Singers. For thousands of years, they have protected eggs hidden in the deep caverns, waiting for someone who could help complete their sacred duty." Jake reached into his pack and withdrew his grandmother's music box, winding it carefully. As the delicate melody filled the canyon air, more stalkers appeared on the surrounding cliffs. Their deep voices joined the earth song, creating harmonies that seemed to make the very stones sing. The Emperor's eyes widened slightly. "They are singing." "Music is the key," Jake said. "The singer eggs need harmonic vibrations to complete their hatching process. The stalkers have tried for millennia to provide the right frequencies, but they could never quite match what was needed. Human music contains the missing elements." Shadow moved closer to Jake and gently touched the boy's shoulder with his massive head. The gesture was clearly one of affection and trust, and even the Emperor's hardened warriors looked impressed. "My son claims you have failed to tame these creatures," Emperor Zorvok said. "Yet I see something I have never witnessed in 50 years of conquest. They follow you willingly." "Not follow, Your Majesty. We work together. Shadow and his pack know every cave system, every thermal vent, every hidden passage on this planet. They understand its geology better than our best scientists because they have been its protectors for centuries." Jake gestured toward the distant canyon systems where dozens of stalkers could be seen moving along the cliff tops. "Partner with them and you gain guides who can show you wonders that no scanner or probe could ever find. The mineral wealth alone would make this planet invaluable." Prince Valdris stepped forward angrily. "Father, you cannot seriously consider this nonsense. The boy has simply learned some primitive animal training techniques." "Have I?" Jake asked calmly. He turned to Shadow and spoke in clear English. "Show them the deep chambers." Without hesitation, Shadow rose and began walking toward a section of canyon wall that looked completely solid. The massive stalker pressed against what appeared to be blank stone, and a hidden passage opened with a grinding of ancient mechanisms. "The stalkers built this tunnel system," Jake explained as cool air flowed from the opening. "They have been preparing for the day when the Singers would return. Everything on this planet has been shaped by their guardianship." Emperor Zorvok stepped closer to the hidden entrance, genuine curiosity replacing his imperial composure. "You claim there are eggs in these caverns?" "Thousands of them, Your Majesty. All waiting to hatch. All containing a species that has been extinct for longer than your empire has existed." The Emperor studied Jake with calculating eyes. "And you believe these singers have value beyond mere scientific curiosity? A species that the stalkers considered worth protecting for thousands of years? The knowledge they must possess, the technologies they might have developed, the art and culture they could share. It's beyond imagination." Jake pulled out one of the crystalline fragments from the deep chambers. As it caught the sunlight, it began to pulse with soft music that seemed to resonate in everyone's bones. "This is just one small piece of their legacy. Imagine what we could learn from a living singer." Emperor Zorvok was quiet for a long moment, his ancient eyes moving between Jake, the singing crystal, and the patient stalkers waiting nearby. Finally he spoke. The original wager was clear. If a human could tame a stalker, they would own this planet. You have done something far more remarkable. You have proven that cooperation can achieve what force cannot. The Emperor's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "By imperial decree, this world is granted to Jake Harrison as promised. However, I propose a modification to this arrangement." Jake held his breath. "Serve as this planet's governor. Establish the first tri-species colony in galactic history. Help the Singers return to life, and teach both our peoples what you have learned about partnership instead of conquest." Jake looked up at Shadow, who rumbled his approval. Around the canyon, dozens of stalker voices joined in harmonious agreement. "Deal?" Jake said. 6 months later, Jake stood in the nursery cavern deep beneath the planet's surface, watching the first Singer egg crack open. The creature that emerged was beautiful beyond description. Wings that seemed made of living crystal, a body that glowed with its own inner light, and a voice that turned simple sounds into pure music. Shadow pressed close beside him, the massive guardians rumbling a gentle counterpoint to the Singer's first tentative song. Above them, human and Zorathian scientists worked together, recording every moment as an extinct species took its first breath in millennia. Jake smiled as more eggs began to show signs of hatching. Sometimes the greatest victory came not from conquering, but from learning when to extend your hand in friendship.